Gonna get started in a couple minutes. Good evening. Good evening, everyone. I'm on both Instagram and Facebook. So if I'm looking up and looking down, that's why. Today, we're talking about the new Parole program available for Haitians, Cubans, Nicaraguans, and Venezuelans. So come on in, learn a little bit more about what the program is, what it is not, how you can apply. And we'll get started talking about it in just a little bit. But in the meantime, feel free to ask questions and send questions so that I can answer them for you during this live. Feel free to do that. Hi, everyone. Let me actually get my questions up here. So let's get started. Let's talk about what this program is. What's an A number? Great. So I'll get to that. I'll talk about that in a little bit as we go through the program, because I know that part of it is adding your A number, or the beneficiary adding their A number to the forms. So that is a good question. Someone asked about what an A number is. So we'll get to that in a minute. Hi, Jennifer. Thank you for joining. So let's get started. So I received, actually, before I get to that, let me introduce myself. My name is Miriam Lacroix from Lacroix Law, owner and attorney at Lacroix Law. We are an immigration law firm. Good evening, Diani. We're an immigration law firm located in White Plains, New York. But as an immigration attorney, I help people all over the US and abroad. And so the types of cases we handle are family-based cases, spouses petitioning for their spouse, their children, and other family members that are eligible to be petitioned for. And we do also humanitarian immigration, similar to what we're going to talk about today, and business and employment, helping executives and professionals obtain visas and green cards in the US to work for their US companies. So thank you for joining me this evening. I want to jump right in and talk a little bit about this new Parole program for Haitians, Cubans, Nicaraguans, and Venezuelans that was just announced this past Friday, a couple of days ago, right? And since then, I've received a lot of questions from current clients, potential clients, friends, and family about this program and what it means for the nationals who are eligible for it, how you can apply, sort of what is the process. And so I'm coming on live today to talk about that and to answer the questions that you have about the process, okay? So what is it? Let's start with what it is, right? It's a parole program. And so parole is basically an official permission to enter the United States and remain for a certain period of time. And so this parole in particular is for up to 2 years, okay? So nationals of Haiti, Cuba, Nicaragua, and Venezuela are going to be able to apply for permission to enter the United States for a period of 2 years, up to 2 years, and work, right? So that, so that they can, be here with their family. Some might have applications pending, so on and so forth, right? And so what we hear is that there will likely be around 30,000 available for, on a monthly basis of of parole, right? So that means over these 4 countries, they will allow 30,000 people to be paroled into the United States. It's not clear as to, if it's split up in any specific way between the countries, but overall, it'll be about 30,000 a month. We don't know how long the program will last, and so now that it's open and it's available, it's probably something you should jump on sooner than later. Okay, for those of you just joining, we're talking about the new parole program for Cubans, Haitians, Nicaraguans, and Venezuelans that was announced on Friday. And so I was just sort of explaining what parole is, being an official permission to enter the United States and remain for a certain period of time. And this parole allows people to remain for up to 2 years and obtain work authorization while they're here. And so who exactly is eligible? And before I mention that, I want to talk about the difference between the supporter and the beneficiary. The supporter is going to be someone who is saying, asking for their family member to come to the US because they have the resources to bring them here and make sure they are taken care of while they're here, right? That's the supporter. But then we also have the beneficiary. The beneficiary is the person who is outside of the country who is being petitioned for, asking to come into the US. Okay, so we have 2 roles here specifically. And so how a beneficiary, and if you're just joining, I'm looking up and down because I'm both on Instagram and Facebook. So trying to give everyone enough eye contact. But to be eligible as a beneficiary, you have to be a national or a citizen of one of the 4 countries that I mentioned, right? And so being a national citizen of Haiti, Cuba, Nicaragua, and Venezuela, right? Those are the 4 countries under this particular program. Humanitarian parole exists for everyone, right? This is a program that's been around for some time, but this particular program, parole program, is specific to these 4 countries, right? So you have to be a national or citizen of one of those 4 countries to be eligible, okay? You also have to be outside the United States. And so a lot of the calls or a lot of the messages that I got since Friday was, can I apply while I'm here? Because there are some people who have, weren't eligible in the last application period for TPS and things like that. And so they're thinking of other things they can apply for. No, you cannot apply if you're already in the United States. You have to be outside the United States to apply for this program, okay? And you also have to have a US-based supporter, right? You have to have someone in the US who can vouch for you, who can say that they will support you when you come to the United States. The benefit, though, is that it's not like the affidavit of support that you file when you're doing a family-based application, where there are very strict rules about who your sponsor can be. In this situation, your sponsor has to live in the US, but they don't have to be a US citizen or a permanent resident, right? They don't have to have a green card. They don't have to be a citizen, but they do have to be living in the US lawfully, which means that they have some sort of lawful status. It doesn't have to be citizenship and it doesn't have to be permanent residence, but it does have to be a lawful status, right? So for example, they could have TPS, temporary protected status, and be working in the US. Hey, Bianca, and be working in the US legally, and can be your supporter, right? Or in some other non-immigrant lawful status where they're able to work as well, okay? And we'll talk a little bit more about the supporter in a minute and what their requirements are. But sticking to the beneficiary, the other thing that they have to possess is a valid passport, right? You have to have a valid passport. That means the passport is not expired, that it is going to be valid for some time, right? If it's about to expire, that's something, depending on how recent, how close it's going to expire, you might want to think about renewing it, but you have to have a valid passport. if you are national of these countries, right? You also, as the beneficiary, have to pass a security check, right? They will do a background check on both the beneficiary and the supporter, right? And comply with other requirements. And when they say other requirements, it's probably related to medical requirements. There's a medical screening. You're going to have to show that you've been vaccinated as the beneficiary of this program. And so that's something to think about, right? If you are the supporter of someone who's interested in coming in the United States, you want to think about the fact that they're going to have to be vaccinated if that is a concern. Okay, so let's talk about the supporter, right? We talked about there are two roles here, the beneficiary and the supporter. Let's talk a little bit about the supporter and what their role is and what their responsibilities are as a supporter. So we did already talk about the fact that the supporter doesn't have to be a US citizen and doesn't have to be a permanent resident, but does have to have a lawful status here in the US, working and able to say that they can support you, right? So TPS is also good enough in that situation. And so the supporter doesn't have to be a family member, right? Doesn't have to be an immediate family member. The supporter just has to be someone who is currently living in the United States, has a lawful status, and has some sort of income to say that they can support you, right? And so the supporter starts this process for the beneficiary. The supporter submits their support, right, their affidavit of support to USCIS, and that's how we get this process started. And what the supporter is saying is that they have sufficient resources, right? They have sufficient resources to receive, maintain, support an individual who they are supporting, right, and bringing to the United States, and they're agreeing to support them, right? They don't necessarily have to live with the supporter, but the supporter does have to see that they have a safe and appropriate place to live, okay? Safe and appropriate housing for them, and that they can get their basic necessities like healthcare, right? Help them apply for work authorization when they get here and apply for their social security number, take care of their medical needs, also assisting the beneficiary with other things like English classes and education, other sorts of education, right? And securing employment, right? So the employer or the supporter, is promising to support the beneficiary once they are in the United States, whether that be financially or with housing or with other things. Okay, so that is the responsibility of the supporter. And so once the supporter puts in this application, then at some point, the supporter will have their own background check, right? USCIS will make sure that the supporter can, in fact, support the beneficiary. And so this means that as the supporter, if you plan on being someone's supporter, you are going to have to submit your financial information, right? And so, Jennifer asked, according to USCIS website, we have to use letters from the bank and from the employer. Just bank statements won't do. According to the website, what they're requesting is a letter from a bank officer. I would say I would get the letter from the bank officer that states when you open the bank account, how long you've had the account, right? How much has been deposited into the account over time. Gil asked, approved I-130 and completing consular process in Haiti, can they apply? So there really isn't anything that says that if you have a pending process that you can't apply, right? If they're completing the consular process in Haiti, I assume they've submitted all of the documents necessary to be documentarily qualified, and they're waiting on the visa, the interview at the consulate. There isn't any reason why they couldn't apply for this program and come, sort of in the meantime. So, You're welcome. All right, so who isn't eligible for this program? So you can have applications pending, right? So Gil, to your question, that's completely fine, right? But you aren't eligible if you are currently in the US, right? The beneficiary has to be outside of the United States in order to be eligible, okay? Another way you won't be eligible is if you are a dual national, right? If you are a national of one of these 4 countries and another country, right? You have dual citizenship, right? And so that would be okay if the person, the main beneficiary is a national of one of these 4 countries, and that person who is a dual national is the immediate relative of that person, right? And so if you are the main beneficiary and you are a national of Haiti or a citizen of Haiti, for example, and your spouse is a dual citizen of Haiti and somewhere else, they would be eligible through you because you are a citizen of Haiti, okay? Another way that you aren't eligible is if you have some sort of status in a country other than these 4 countries, right? And so if you become an asylee in a third country or a lawful permanent resident, right, that status would make you ineligible unless what we just talked about, the main beneficiary, your immediate relative, doesn't have that same issue. In addition, if you've been ordered removed within the last 5 years, that can also make you ineligible for this program. Not only being ordered removed in the last 5 years, but have some sort of bar to admissibility based on a prior removal, right? Maybe you have a prior removal due to a crime or something like that, right? And that makes you inadmissible, right, into the United States, something that you would need a waiver for if you are applying for a family-based visa or green card, that would make you ineligible for this program. And finally, if you cross the border into the US after the date of the announcement, right? After Friday, if you cross into the US, they also say if you crossed into Mexico or Panama, that would make you ineligible for this program. So there are 6 things that I mentioned that makes you ineligible, right? You're currently in the US, you're a dual citizen, you have status in another country, right? You've been ordered removed from the United States in the last 5 years. You are subject to an inadmissibility bar because of a previous deportation, and you have crossed the border into the United States since the announcement, which was Friday, okay? Some other important notes about this program. One, it has to do with unaccompanied children, which is interesting, right? I think what they're saying is that if someone is under the age of 18, they have to travel with a parent or guardian, okay? If they aren't traveling with a parent or guardian, they won't be eligible for the program, right? They can't travel by themselves. However, that doesn't mean that they aren't eligible for parole altogether, right? There's always been this regular parole that we file in Form I-131. They would still be eligible for parole, just not under this program, okay? So children under 18 have to travel with a parent or guardian. I think I mentioned before, but another important note is that beneficiaries will need to be vaccinated. They'll go through a blood test when they get here. And once they get here, they can apply for work authorization, right? They'll be eligible for work authorization for the 2 years that they're here under parole, okay? So any questions that come up for you knowing now what the process is or what the requirements are. See if anyone on Facebook has any. So some of the things that you are going to have to start gathering, right, for this process. Beneficiaries should have their passport, right? Make sure that you have your passport, okay? If the beneficiaries have any assets, right, any sort of resources, the application that the supporter submits does ask about that, right? And so the supporter and the beneficiary should be communicating so that the supporter has this information so that they can complete the form that they need to complete in order to get the process started, right? They need all the information for the beneficiary, where they're living abroad, and their biographical information, name, date of birth, place of birth, and what their assets are, what they might be, right? And as I mentioned before, if you are a supporter, you need to start gathering all of your financial information, right? Information about your bank accounts, information about where you work and how much you make, and that can come, from a letter from your employer on letterhead, right? You have your taxes that you filed. I wouldn't submit your full tax return. It's easier to go on the IRS website and find your tax transcript, irs.gov. You can download your tax transcript that has the information for the years that you request. So you'll need your taxes, bank information, and information about your income. And you should start gathering that now. Because like I said, we don't know how long this program is going to be. And so you don't really want to wait until the last minute to start applying. So that is all the information I have for you this evening. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, if this is a program that you think that you have a beneficiary for that might be eligible and you want to be a supporter, or vice versa, right? You're a beneficiary and you have a supporter, you can always reach out to my office. We handle cases like this all the time. And we have started accepting cases for this new parole program. So our number is 914-368-3550. We will be open tomorrow morning and getting started on our current clients who might have family who are eligible for this program. So I hope you all have a great evening wherever you are around the world. If it's not evening, have a great afternoon or morning. And if you have questions, definitely reach out. Have a wonderful evening.